Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. I'd like to take a brief moment and acknowledge the elite members of the channel. Thank you all so much for your continued and dedicated support. It means the world. Without further ado, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. It's time to sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Creepy Camping Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. The wild had always called to me, a primal pull that thrummed in my bones since I was a kid. Chris felt it too, my oldest friend, the one who ditched class with me to roam the shadowed ravines of Toronto's edges, where the city's hum faded into the rustle of leaves and the whisper of hidden streams. Those childhood escapades hardened into a ritual. Every summer, we'd choose the wilderness, pack light, and vanish into the untamed. We called it hardcore camping, a term we thought we coined, though I suspect others had stumbled onto the same mad idea. No tents, no stove, just ponchos, ground sheets, and whatever we could carry. Food was minimal, forcing us to forage or fish after a day or two to wrestle with hunger and the land itself. That was the thrill, the raw, unforgiving challenge of it. At 24, we picked Algonquin Provincial Park, a vast sprawl of forest and lakes in Ontario, for a 7-day plunge into the abyss. What we found there, though, wasn't the wild we sought. It was something older, darker, and it's never let me go. The first day was a deceptive lull. We hiked 12 miles from the trailhead, hacking through pine and birch that clawed at our packs like jealous spirits. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of decay, and the sky loomed low, bruised with clouds that seemed to watch us. By dusk, we reached a shallow creek, its waters gurgling like a warning. I strung my poncho under a branch that twisted like a broken spine, while Chris gathered sticks, his movements sharp, almost frantic, as if the forest demanded his haste. We ate our jerky, boiled creek water over a fire that sputtered like it was afraid to burn too bright, and watched the stars pierce the black. The silence was thick, broken only by the rustle of leaves and an owl's mournful cry, too distant to comfort. I told myself this was what we craved. No noise, no people, just us and the wild. But the quiet felt wrong, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting. Day 2 was a descent into toil. The terrain turned cruel, rocks like jagged teeth, roots that snaked across the path to trip us. A steep ridge left my calves screaming, while Chris, tall and lean, moved like a wraith, his strides swallowing the ground. I struggled to keep up, my breath ragged, my eyes on the back as he pressed forward, unyielding, like something was pulling him. That night, we collapsed on a mossy patch, the ground cold as a crypt. I woke once to a snap in the dark, my hand scrambling for my knife, heart hammering. A deer, I whispered to myself. Just a deer. But the sound echoed in my mind, too sharp, too deliberate, like a step taken with purpose. By day 3, we'd hardened to the rhythm of the wild. Our packs were lighter, food nearly gone, but hunger was a spur, not a burden. That afternoon, Chris caught a trout in the stream, his makeshift line taut as he reeled it in, his eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. We cooked it over a fire, tearing the flesh with our hands, the taste sharp and primal. The stream water was cold, cutting, better than anything bottled, and it left a metallic aftertaste that lingered. Algonquin stretched around us, endless and ancient. Thousands of square miles with no roads, no rangers, no escape. That's why we were here, to be consumed by the vastness, to test ourselves against its indifference. But the forest felt alive. It's silent, not empty, but watchful, like eyes glinting just beyond the firelight. The fourth day dawned wrong. Chris was up before me, rolling his ground sheet with mechanical precision, his face pale, eyes distant. We ate the last of our granola, shouldered our packs, and pushed north through a forest so dense it seemed to choke the light. Our footsteps were the only sound, a dull rhythm swallowed by the tree's oppressive hush. Around noon, we stopped at a narrow stream, its surface glassy, reflecting the twisted branches, above like a shattered mirror. I knelt to refill my canteen, the cold biting my hands, when Chris grabbed my shoulder, his grip too tight. "You see that?" he hissed, pointing into the gloom. I followed his gaze, squinting through the tangle of trees. At first, nothing. Then a shape, too straight, too unnatural to belong. We moved closer, the underbrush resisting, branches snapping back like they meant to hold us. The trees parted, and there it was, a church, or something that mocked the church's name. Its walls were gray, splintered wood, weathered to the color of ash, as if the forest had been draining its life for centuries. The roof was steep, draped in moss and needles, a rusted color tilting at its peak like a broken promise. Another cross hung above the door, boarded shut with chains, and a padlock so rusted it looked like it might crumble at a touch. No windows, no steeple, just a lifeless box, half devoured by the wilderness. I turned to Chris, my voice barely a whisper. "What the hell is this?" He didn't answer, just unfolded the map with trembling hands, tracing our path. Nothing. No mark. No symbol. No hint of this place. It didn't exist. We circled the structure, roots twisting underfoot like veins, branches clawing at our clothes. The chain door gleamed with rust, untouched for decades, maybe longer. On the side, we found a hole, low and jagged, where the wood had rotted away, just big enough for a man to crawl through. "Animal den," Chris said, peering into the dark, but his voice was hollow, like he didn't believe it. He dropped his pack and fell to his knees, staring into the hole with a hunger that chilled me. "You're not going in there," I said, my stomach twisting. He ignored me, sliding through the gap, his body vanishing into the shadows. I cursed, ditched my pack, and followed, the splintered wood tearing at my skin, the air inside cold and damp, reeking of mold and something sharp like old blood. We stood in the dim light, dirt crunching under our boots. The church was empty. No pews, no altar, just bare walls and a floor of packed earth, littered with leaves that crackled like whispers. A massive wooden cross loomed at the far end, its surface scarred, blackened as if it had screamed in a fire. But the center of the room stopped my breath. A steel trap door, half buried in dirt, bolted shut with chains as thick as my arm. A rusted padlock gleaming faintly in the gloom. It wasn't just locked. It was imprisoned, like something beneath was clawing to get out. I stepped closer, my boots sinking into the earth. The trap door's cold metal burning my fingers. Chris knelt beside it, tugging the chains, the clink echoing like a warning. "What needs chains like this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Chris's eyes glinted, feverish. "Maybe it's not a church anymore," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "A hideout, smuggler's stash maybe, loot, locked away." His words felt like lies, a desperate shield against the truth. "Or something worse," I said. "Chemicals, waste, something no one wants found." He didn't hear me. His gaze locked on the trapdoor, his face pale, sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. "We've got to get in there," he said, standing, his voice sharp like a blade. He moved for the hole. "Let's find something to break the chains." I grabbed his arm, panic rising. "Chris, stop. This is insane." He yanked free, his strength unnatural, and crawled outside. I scrambled after him, the forest air biting my lungs. He was pacing, kicking at the ground, searching for a rock to smash the lock. The forest offered nothing but needles and small stones. But he didn't stop. "Chris, listen," I pleaded. "If there's something down there, it's not ours. It could be dangerous. Gangs, poison, anything." He ignored me, his eyes wild, like a man possessed. "I'll hike until I find something," he shouted, striding into the trees. "I don't care how long." I snapped. I ran after him, grabbed his shoulder, and spun him around. "What the hell's wrong with you?" He shoved me, hard, and we grappled, stumbling over roots. He was taller, but I was stronger, pinning him against a tree, my hands shaking. "Stop. Just stop." He froze, his chest heaving, his face pale and slick. "I don't know," he muttered, his voice breaking. "I can't stop thinking about it. That trap door. I need to know." He rubbed his temples, wincing, like something was burrowing into his skull. I crouched beside him, my heart slowing. "Are you okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were distant, haunted, like he'd seen something I hadn't. We grabbed our packs and fled, the church's silhouette fading into the trees like a nightmare. The rest of the trip was a shadow of itself. We camped 2 more nights, foraging boiling water, but the wild felt tainted, its silence predatory. I watched Chris, waiting for that madness to return, but he seemed to snap back, quiet but normal. By the time we drove back to Toronto, he was joking, calling the church the cellar stash, turning it into a story we'd laugh about. But alone, in the dark, it wasn't funny. The gray wood, the rustic crosses, the trap door chained like a coffin. They haunted me. Life resumed its gray routine. My desk job, Chris's kitchen shifts, our drinks and plans for new trips. Algonquin was never mentioned, an unspoken curse. The church came up in jest, but I couldn't shake it. I'd lie awake, seeing the trap door, hearing the chains rattle in my dreams. Chris's talk of cash or jewels felt hollow. Something about that place was wrong. Something that twisted him into someone I didn't know. I scoured forums, maps, desperate for answers, but found nothing. The church didn't exist, not officially. Maybe it never did. A ghost built for a purpose, long forgotten. But those chains, gleaming in the dim light, told me it was real, and it was hiding something unspeakable. Years later, Chris is the same. Loud, stubborn, loyal. He laughs off the church, but I can't. I dream of that trapdoor, waking with my heart pounding, certain I hear it creak open. It's still out there, silent in the trees, guarding whatever lies beneath. I pray it stays chained, but some nights I feel it calling, and I wonder if Chris hears it too. It began with a restless hunger for something more than our usual camping trips. Those lazy weekends by a lake with burgers sizzling on a portable grill. In the winter of 2015, Matt, Jake, and I decided to tackle the Pacific Crest Trail, a 70-mile trek from Echo Lake near South Lake Tahoe to Donner Pass, spanning 5 days through the desolation wilderness. We planned it for late winter when the trails would be clear and the air crisp but forgiving. Permits were easy enough to secure, and the route meant we could avoid civilization entirely, carrying all we needed on our backs. Friends called us insane. 70 miles wasn't their idea of a vacation, but we were electrified by the challenge. It wasn't just about proving ourselves. It was about stealing back the time we felt slipping away as adulthood tightened its grip. By the time we hit the trailhead, we were buzzing with anticipation, oblivious to the shadows that waited. The first day was a seductive lure. The trail from Echo Lake wound through alpine meadows and granite cliffs, the landscape breathtaking but strangely oppressive, as if the peaks were leaning in to whisper secrets. We covered 10 miles to Aloha Lake, a crystalline pool ringed by jagged stone that seemed to hum with a low, unnatural frequency. As we set up camp, the sun bled into the horizon, casting low, claw-like shadows across the water. We built a fire, its warmth a fleeting comfort against the chill that settled in with the dark. Sitting there, passing a flask of whiskey, I felt a fleeting sense of triumph, thinking this trip might be the best decision we'd ever made. But the forest was watching, its silence not empty, but heavy, pregnant with intent. Day 2 tested us, a 13-mile haul to Middle Velma Lake. The climb to Dick's Pass, nearly 10,000 feet, was a brutal ascent, the air thinning until each breath burned. The view from the summit was otherworldly, ridges stretching into infinity, but it felt like we were being judged by the vastness below. We cracked crude jokes about the pass's name, our laughter too loud, swallowed too quickly by the wind. By the time we reached the lake, our bodies ached, but the campsite was tranquil, the water lapping softly like a lullaby. That night, under a sky that pressed down like a lid, I slept fitfully, haunted by dreams of eyes glinting in the dark. The third day offered a deceptive reprieve, a 12-mile trek through forests and meadows to Richardson Lake. The trail was gentle, crisscrossed by streams that murmured like voices just out of earshot. We arrived early, our mood lifted by the ease of the day. We set up camp near the water, the bourbon in our canteen warming our throats as the stars emerged, sharp and unblinking. But the forest's hum was louder now, a pulse that vibrated in my bones. I told myself it was just the bourbon, the fatigue, but the darkness beyond our firelight seemed to shift, as if something was circling just out of sight. Day 4 was where the cracks widened. We pushed 13 miles to Barker Pass, navigating ridge lines above Lake Tahoe. The views were stunning, but the sheer drops triggered my vertigo, my heart hammering every time I glanced over the edge. 4 days of hiking had worn us down, our steps heavy, our silences tense. When we finally descended to the pass, I was shaky, not just from the trail, but from a growing dread I couldn't shake. That night, as we pitched our tents, Jake revealed his surprise. A baggie of magic mushrooms he'd smuggled in his pack. He was into psychedelics, not obsessively, but enough to want to connect with the wild. Matt was eager, but I balked. I'd never touched anything stronger than beer, and the idea of losing control out here made my skin crawl. But their enthusiasm wore me down, and I agreed to a half dose. Jake handed me a dark, pungent clump, instructing me to swallow it in pieces like water to avoid vomiting. "It's not LSD," he promised. "Just warm, fuzzy, maybe some giggles." I followed his instructions, the bitter taste coating my tongue. We wandered to the lake as the effects crept in, the world softening, colors bleeding into each other. The stars pulsed, the moon a cold, unblinking eye. We laughed hysterically, howling at the sky, our voices echoing off the cliffs like a summons. It was exhilarating, until I lagged behind on the way back to camp, my gaze lost in the cosmic sprawl above. The sky felt alive, pulling me in until I was dizzy, teetering on the edge of something vast and unknowable. Blinking hard, I looked down, and that's when I saw it. A figure, 40 yards away, standing motionless in the shadows. It was humanoid, but wrong. Its neck twisted at an unnatural angle, head turned fully to stare at me, while its body faced away. My blood ran cold. Hey, wait up," I called, stumbling toward it. The figure glided backward, its gaze locked onto mine, unblinking, until it melted into the trees. Jake's voice snapped me back. "This way, dude." And I turned, heart pounding. When I looked again, it was gone. We laughed it off as a mushroom-induced hallucination, blaming the starry sky and my half-dose. But the image of that twisted neck seared itself into my mind. Sleep didn't come easily. The forest's hum was a chorus now, and I swore I heard footsteps circling our camp. The final day was a punishing 19-mile slog to Donner Pass. We started at 5 a.m., our bodies screaming, our minds frayed. The trail was merciless, and we barely spoke, each lost in our own battle against exhaustion. Blisters bled, muscles burned, but we pushed on, driven by the need to finish. Reaching Donner Pass felt like a miracle, a hard-won victory. We set up our final camp, devouring the last of our food as the sun sank, painting the sky in shades of decay. As darkness fell, we sat around the fire, our mood softening into something raw, almost sacred. "Love you guys," Matt said, his voice thick, and we echoed it, the words tethered in the vast night. Then we heard it. Footsteps crunching through the trees, deliberate and close. My heart seized, the memory of that twisted figure flashing like a warning. We froze, ears straining. 2 legs, not 4. But the knowledge it was human brought no comfort. A man stepped into the firelight, and the sight of him turned my blood to ice. He was gaunt, his clothes ragged and stained with something dark, his hair a greasy curtain framing a receding forehead. His lower jaw was mangled, one side collapsed inward like it had been carved away. His speech a wet, guttural rasp. He limped each step, a calculated menace. And his eyes, small, beady, glinting like polished coal, seemed to swallow the light. "Nice night, ain't it?" he said, his voice slithering through the air. Jake nodded, his voice tight. "It sure is." The man asked to join us by the fire, just for a bit. He looked alone, and despite the alarming bells screaming in my head, we didn't want to provoke him. "Go ahead," Matt said, gesturing to a spot. The man shuffled over, his limp grotesque, and sat. His scent a mix of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. His eyes never left the flames, but I felt them on us, probing, hungry. "You hikers?" he asked, his rasp curling around the words. We nodded, keeping it vague. "Been roaming these hills my whole life," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. When Jake asked if he lived nearby, he paused, his lips twitching. "Me and my kin been here a long time," he said, drawing out the words until they felt like a curse. The forest seemed to lean in, the air thick with threat. He asked if we were armed, his gaze flicking over us like a predator sizing up prey. Matt admitted we had a small pistol. One of us had a permit, but we'd chosen a lightweight gun to save space. The man's smile was a jagged slash, his chuckle a blade against my nerves. "Just a pistol," he muttered, his eyes glinting. Then he asked, "Y'all telling campfire tales?" We shook our heads. explaining we'd been reminiscing, not spinning ghost stories. His smile widened, revealing teeth like broken gravestones. "Wanna hear one?" he asked, his voice a lure. We shrugged, uneasy but trapped by curiosity. He leaned forward, the fire casting his mangled face into a grotesque mask. "It's a true story," he began, "about 3 city boys, just like you, hiking the PCT." His tale mirrored our journey with chilling accuracy. The lakes, the passes, the miles we trudged. My pulse raced as he described the 4th night when the foolish city boys got wild by the lake, screaming and howling, disturbing the folk who call these hills home. His voice dripped with contempt, hurling slurs and insults, painting us as intruders, mocking the land. It hit me like a fist. He was talking about us, about our mushroom-fueled night. Anger surged, but fear clamped my jaw shut. How did he know so much? Had he been tracking us? His limp no match for our grueling 19-mile day? His story turned darker, describing how the boys, dumb as dirt, sat by their fire on the 5th night, blind to the danger around them. A stranger joined them, he said, and told them how lucky they were to still be breathing, how foolish they were to trespass in his domain. He laughed, his black eyes gleaming, feeding on our fear. Matt snapped. "Enough," he growled, standing. "Time to go." The man ignored him, his story rolling on, describing how the boys considered attacking the stranger. Jake stood too, his voice hard. "Move it." The man paused, his head tilting, and fixed Jake with a stare that stopped my heart. "Those boys," he said, his voice a hiss, "realized that stranger wasn't alone. Couldn't have kept up, not with a bad leg. Had his kin waiting in the dark, ready to put those boys down for good." The forest exhaled, a chorus of rustles and snaps circling us. My blood roared in my ears as he stood, his smile a promise of violence. "See you around, boys," he said, and limped into the darkness. As he vanished, I heard them. Footsteps, a dozen or more, moving in unison just beyond the firelight. We didn't sleep. We grabbed our gear, pistol drawn, flashlights trembling, and hiked miles through the night, the forest alive with whispers. Even when we pitched our tents again, the feeling of being watched never left. We escaped, but the wilderness marked us. I see those coal black eyes in my nightmares, feel that twisted figure's gaze. Matt and Jake didn't speak of it, but the shadows in their eyes mirror mine. Something was out there, something that knew us, hunted us, and let us go for reasons I dread to imagine. If you hike the PCT, stay sharp. Tell someone your path. Don't camp where the silence sings. The hills are alive, and they never forget. The city's noise had always felt like a cage, So when Simon, Eddie, and I planned a weekend escape to Harriman State Park, it felt like breaking free. We've been friends since our Brooklyn childhood, sneaking into alleys and empty lots, chasing the thrill of places we weren't supposed to be. This trip was our chance to trade concrete for wilderness, to lose ourselves in the quiet of the forest. We spent weeks planning, packing our gear, tents, a camp stove, just enough food to get by, and drove up from Brooklyn on a Friday afternoon, the city's hum fading behind us. Harriman was silent when we arrived, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. We picked a spot by a small lake far from the main trails, chosen from a crumpled map because it promised solitude. As we set up camp, the sun bled into the horizon. The trees seemed to lean closer, their shadows pooling like ink. That first night, we roasted hot dogs, cracked beers, and talked until the fire died to embers. The stars cold and sharp above. It was perfect. Or it should have been. The next morning, we hit the trails with no plan, just the urge to move deeper into the wild. Late morning sun filtered through the canopy, casting jagged patterns on the ground. Eddie, always the shutterbug, snapped photos of mushrooms and oddly shaped rocks, while Simon rambled about finding a lunch spot, his voice cutting through the forest's hush. I trailed behind, half listening as they bickered about whether Bigfoot could roam New York's woods. The trail faded into a tangle of roots and underbrush, but we kept going, driven by the reckless pull of the unknown. After hours of wandering, the trees thinned and we stumbled onto a small lake, its surface still as glass, not marked on our map. On its shore stood a shack, a sagging relic of weathered wood, gray-brown and splintered, as if the forest had been gnawing at it for decades. The roof drooping like a broken spine, and the single window was a dark, empty square, a torn scrap of curtain twitching inside. The door hung ajar, creaking on rusted hinges, pushed by a wind I couldn't feel. Simon said it looked abandoned. Eddie nodded, but I wasn't convinced. Something about the shack felt wrong, like it was watching us, waiting. Still, curiosity pulled us closer. Inside, the air was thick, musty, with the stench of wet earth and rotting wood. The dim light from the window barely reached the corners, leaving the room cloaked in shadow. A rough wooden table stood in the center, its surface scarred and stained with dark, uneven patches that gleamed black in the gloom. I ran my fingers over one, expecting dampness, but it was dry, almost warm, like it held onto something alive. Eddie muttered it was probably blood, and Simon pointed to the walls, lined with a dozen hooks. Something bent, something rusted, screwed into the boards at odd heights. Empty now, no tools or ropes, just the suggestion of things that once hung there. Hunter's shack, Simon said, for skinning deer or whatever. We nodded, clinging to the explanation, but it felt flimsy, like a lie we told ourselves to keep moving. We poked around, Simon kicking at the tattered curtain, Eddie snapping a photo of the table for his hunter brother. I lingered by the door, the air pressing heavier, urging me to leave. The shack didn't feel like a hunter's refuge. It felt like a trap. Outside, the lake air was a relief, sharp and clean, but the unease clung to me. We started back toward camp, the forest swallowing the shack behind us. Then Simon tripped, his foot catching on something near the shack's side. He flailed but caught himself, and we gathered around a glint of metal poking from the dirt, rusted and half buried. At first, I thought it was a knife, maybe a hatchet, dropped and forgotten. Simon crouched, brushing away soil, but it didn't budge. "It stuck," he said. Eddie handed me his water bottle, grinning. "Dig it up." I grabbed a stick, scraping at the earth, while Simon clawed with his hands, tossing clumps aside. The more we uncovered, the stranger it became. Not a tool, but something hollow, curved. After 10 minutes, we'd freed it. A helmet, heavy and iron, pitted with rust but solid. Its shape alien and wrong, tall and pointed like a pyramid. Its front bore 2 slits for eyes, carved like crosses. Not the soft curves of a church cross, but sharp, jagged, hacked into the metal with brutal intent. It didn't belong here, in the middle of nowhere, buried by a shack that shouldn't exist. Eddie stepped back, his voice low. "What is that?" Simon hefted it, grunting at its weight, and held it up, the cross slits staring at us. "Looks like a clan hood," he said, half laughing. "But metal." I shook my head. The clan didn't wear iron pyramids, and this felt older, heavier, like it was forged for something darker than hate. Simon turned it over, peering inside. "Smells like rust and mud," he said, then grinned. "I'm gonna put it on." "No, you're not," Eddie snapped, snatching it from him. He set it on the ground, wiping his hand on his jeans like it had burned him. "It's filthy." Simon shrugged, but his eyes lingered on the helmet, hungry in a way that made my skin crawl. Those cross slits seemed to watch us, empty but alive, like they held a gaze we couldn't see. I said nothing, afraid to sound unhinged, but I wanted to run. We left the helmet by the shack and hiked back to camp. The forest's silence heavier now, pressing against my ears. None of us spoke much, our eyes on the trail, the shack's presence lingering like a shadow. By the time we reached camp, the sun was sinking, painting the sky in shades of blood. We built a fire, cooked pasta with jarred sauce, and sat around, trying to reclaim the trip's ease. But the helmet came up again. Eddie called it an art project, maybe a movie prop left behind. Simon scoffed. "Too heavy for that. Why bury it?" I had no answer, just the image of those stains on the table, the hooks on the wall, the shack's wrongness. It wasn't a hunter's den, it was something else. Something that didn't want to be found. We let the topic die, the fire burning low, its embers glowing like eyes in the dark. After sundown, around 9 or 10, Simon stood without a word, grabbed his flashlight and walked into the trees. "Hey, where are you going?" I called. He didn't answer, just kept moving, his beam cutting through the dark. Eddie and I exchanged a look. "He's getting the helmet," Eddie said, his voice tight. We could have stopped him, but we didn't, frozen by some unspoken dread. Simon was gone too long, far longer than the walk to the shack and back. Eddie paced, muttering about Simon's recklessness, while I poked at the fire, trying not to picture that helmet waiting in the dark, its slits gleaming. When Simon returned, he was empty-handed, his face pale, his eyes refusing to meet ours. He sank onto a log, staring at the ground. "I threw it," he said, his voice flat. "Out in the woods, somewhere. Didn't want it looking at me." Eddie frowned. "Looking at you?" Simon shook his head silent, his hands trembling. We pressed, but he wouldn't say any more. His face haunted, like he'd seen something that broke him. The fire died and we crawled into the tent, zipping it shut against the night. I lay awake, listening to the wind's low moan and Simon's uneven breathing, picturing those cross slits staring from the dark, wherever he'd had thrown it. Who would forge something like that? What was it meant to hold? Morning came, gray and cold. We packed in silence, the urge to leave unspoken but shared. The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet, just the engine's hum and the occasional car passing on the highway. We didn't talk about the shack or the helmet. Not then, not ever. But it stayed with me. I'd lie awake, seeing those stains, the hooks, the helmet's jagged crosses. I searched online for anything about a shack in Harriman, but found nothing. No lake, no shack, no buried relic. Maybe we'd wandered too far, into a place that maps forgot. That helmet's still out there. I know it. Rustling in the woods, where Simon threw it. Waiting. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I see those slits in my mind, and I wonder if we walked away from something far worse than we'll ever know. The impulse hit me like a fever. I scoured the internet for dark sky spots in Utah, landing on a remote campground 4 hours into the desert. I booked the last available spot for a week out, bought a tent, a hammock chair, and basic supplies the day before, and drove out with no plan beyond stargazing. My phone, at 60% battery, was my only lifeline, but with no service. I figured I'd save it for music and the drive back. I'm terrible with time, so I arrived as the sun bled into the horizon. The desert air thick with heat and dust. The campground was a scattering of tents, mostly families settling in. I heard parents reading scripture to kids, saw candles glowing in the dusk. It was a new moon, the sky primed for stars, so I rushed to set up my tent before dark swallowed everything. By 10 p.m. I was done, my tent pitched at the campground's edge. To my left, a desert stretched towards a cliff, vast and empty. In front, a bathroom stood about 100 feet away, its dim lights flickering. Beyond it, 2 other campgrounds lay 300 feet off, fading into the dark. To my right and behind, the rest of the campground sprawled, another bathroom, 700 feet away. The bathrooms were the only light sources, save for flashlights bobbing as people moved to and fro. Then, like a switch flipped, The campground went dark. Tents zipped shut. Lights died. Voices fell silent. It was eerie. Perfect stargazing conditions. Yet, no one stayed up. No telescopes. No chairs. Just sleep. I chalked it up to desert logic. Early risers avoiding the brutal morning heat. I worked nights, so staying up was easy. I settled into my hammock chair, ready to grieve. A year earlier, I'd lost everything. Loved ones, stability, pieces of myself. I'd brought 2 grams of mushrooms, hoping a trip would bring closure. I'd tripped dozens of times, mushrooms and acid, in places wilder than this. My trips were predictable, wavy textures, vivid emotions, a fleeting peace. Never hallucinations, never entities. I ate the shrooms at 11 p.m. They come up gentle as I stared at the sky. But the bathroom, 100 feet away, was a distraction. People lingered there, their flashlights waving erratically, never leaving, just circling, vanishing into the dark without lights. It unnerved me, their movements too purposeful, too quiet. I needed to pee but hesitated, wary of the bathroom crowd. Finally, I went, keeping my head down. No one spoke, but I felt eyes on me. Walking back, I saw my hammock chair in the dark, and a figure beside it, motionless, staring at it. My heart stopped. They were alone, a silhouette in the new moon black, fixated on my empty chair. I waved, but they didn't move. I stepped closer, my footsteps crunching, and their heads snapped up, eyes glinting like wet glass. They took 3 steps toward me, then 6 back, flashed a bluish light in my face, and fast-walked to another figure I hadn't seen, 15 feet away. Both shone their blue flashlights at their feet, circling around me toward the women's bathroom. They slipped inside and the door shut. I stood frozen, rationalizing. Maybe they were curious, waiting for a friend, but the air felt wrong, like it was watching. I sat, put on music, and tried to sink into the stars. By midnight, the bathroom group was still there, their flashlights a constant flicker in my peripheral vision. They'd leave the restroom, kill their lights, and melt into the dark, always to the left, empty desert, or behind the building. Then another figure appeared, 7 feet from my chair, silent and still. I ripped off my headphones, heart pounding. They took 2 steps toward me, then 6 back, and vanished into the dark. No flashlight, no sound. My skin crawled. These weren't campers. They moved like they didn't belong, like they were hunting. The campground was dead now. No lights, no voices. I kept my headphones off, ears straining. A jet roared somewhere above, its sound fading and returning, but I couldn't see its lights. A deep boom shook the air, not the ground, my body tensing with it. Laughter drifted from the left, empty desert, sharp and unnatural, like it was mocking me. I stayed, curiosity outweighing fear, until I saw them. Orbs, glowing and swarming above a distant cliff, dancing in patterns no drone could mimic. My breath caught, I thought. I won't record this. It'll ruin it. The thought was alien, not mine, but I obeyed. Another cluster of orbs appeared to my right. The first group shot across the sky to join them, impossibly fast. I grinned, awestruck. This was it. Proof the world was more than I'd been told. The jet returned, louder, its lights steady, not blinking. It flew into a dark cloud I hadn't noticed, vanishing with the sound. The orbs danced for an hour, then faded. By 1 a.m., I had to pee again. As a trans woman, I pass effortlessly, but I'm cautious. The earlier figures made me paranoid, so I chose the men's bathroom, safer if trouble came. I was at the urinal, midstream, when the door slammed open. A man, short brown hair, face half sunken, eyes down, rushed in, barging into the stall beside me. He looked sick, his skin waxy, movement jerky. He peed for 3 seconds, then spent a minute slowly pulling toilet paper, the sound deliberate, taunting. I finished, washed my hands, my heart racing. He shot out of the stall, washing his hands for 2 seconds, and left, his exit as frantic as his entrance. The bathroom lights died the moment I sat back in my chair, both men's and women's, leaving a single yellow bulb glowing by the ranger's bulletin board. The jets roared again, louder as a ring of orbs pulsed around the campground, growing and dimming. Shouting and a baby's cry echoed from the desert, faint but piercing. Behind my tent, light glowed through the trees like a moon that shouldn't exist. I muttered, I'm a dumb bitch, torn between terror and awe. Then it happened. A figure, impossibly tall, 10 to 13 feet, walked past the bathroom. Its head reached the ventilation window, its crown higher than the building. It moved without a flashlight, its stride smooth, unnatural, vanishing into the dark. My body screamed, "Run!" I bolted to my tent, zipping it shut, my breath ragged. The fear was primal, animal, like I'd seen a predator that outmatched me. Something ancient and knowing. I wasn't at the top of the food chain anymore. They were outside, circling my tent, their footsteps light but relentless. Then I felt it. A voice, not heard but known, weaving into my thoughts, subtle as a shadow. It wasn't words but concepts, feelings, instantaneous and overwhelming. We spoke of personal things, grief, loss, my fractured life. I asked about the jets. Are we hunting you? Yes, they said. You are smart, but not creative. They were scared of us, too, but knew us better than we knew them. They wanted connection, but it was hard. My running was proof. It's natural, I said. I'm an animal wired to survive. They liked my honesty, said they feared us but loved us, called me family. They showed me a feeling, unconditional love, vast and warm, like a home I'd never known. You chose this, they said, and memories of childhood flooded in, fragmented, unplaceable. They dodged any questions about their name, their purpose, teasing me with orbs in the trees, lights flickering in the bathroom. When I asked why, they laughed. Not a sound, but a feeling, playful but sharp. I had to pee again, went to the bathroom, and returned unharmed. In my tent, I recorded an audio note, desperate to capture it all. My phone read 11 a.m. Impossible in the dead of night. It felt like validation, a glitch in reality. I stepped out, and they toyed with me more. Lights, orbs, whispers. By 5 a.m., they were gone, the sun rising like nothing had happened. I packed and drove home, the desert silent behind me. I've tripped hundreds of times, but nothing like this. The shrooms didn't create it. They just opened the door. I'm humbled, believing again in something beyond, carrying a sense of family I never had. But I'm haunted too. At night, I hear footsteps, see orbs in the corner of my eye. My phone glitches, showing times that don't exist. I want to meet them again, but I'm terrified. They're out there watching, and I'm not sure what they want or what I chose. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true creepy camping stories. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the rest of the membership of Back to Ashes. Thank you all so much for remaining loyal and dedicated to Back to Ashes. I can't put into words how grateful I truly am. To the new listeners, welcome to the channel. If you enjoyed what you've heard, please leave a like, a comment, and of course subscribe if you'd like to become one of our family members here at Back to Ashes. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and stay safe. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.